I don't think I'll ever be ready, really. But all right.
We're rolling.
Oh, you know what, rolling. All right. Then, if I begin at the beginning, I should probably say that it was the year 1955 when I was assigned to Emmanuel College. Now, just prior to that, I had had 2.5 years of high school. At the Tingsboro for a year and a half, I had opened up the home economics laboratory for the first time. And then I was assigned to go to the North End in Boston to live in Roxbury and drive in, where I took over the school music and made lunch for the nuns at noontime, and in addition taught English and religion, I guess. So at that summer, I was sent, because I had originally, at the time of entering, had wanted to go to Japan as a missionary. That summer, I was sent to Yale for a 12-week course in speaking Japanese. Now, this is the summer of '55. And at the end of the summer, as the assignments came out, I was assigned to Emmanuel College. So I said, well, I'm not sure why I'm going to Emmanuel College. Is it to study English, to teach English, to study home economics, to teach home economics, to study Japanese, to teach Japanese? I wasn't sure. And when I arrived, it turned out that indeed there was a new chairperson who was very, very good. But I was indeed to teach English. And therefore, I was assigned to the great books of the Western world, which included the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Greek plays, Dante, Confessions of St. Augustine, and I forget one other one, of which I had only read Dante. I was assigned a survey of American literature, a survey of English literature, and a writing course and I also sat in on a literary criticism course for the woman who was the chair of the department. Now, at that time, I was also assigned to go out to Watertown on Sundays for Sunday school. And since I was one of 3 drivers in the house with 40 nuns, I was also often on the road to the doctor's offices. Then, when it came time for January, I started my master's degree at Boston University. Now, by the end of 1956, I was rather wiped out. And so I was offered, the nuns had a convent up in the island of Presque Isle in Maine Harbor. It was right on the seaside, and it had been a former small hotel. And it was right up against all the rocks with the open sea coming in and with storms going over. And I would be there for 2 weeks. And so I would head out in the morning with my pillow and sit on the rocks. And so I sat on the rocks for 2 weeks. I could not move otherwise. And it was just such a restoring experience that I fell in love with Maine. But that was '56, and so life pursued. We went on the course. We went back a couple of other times, and just absolutely knew that Maine was a place that was for me. So flash forward then to '66 to '68, I was working in Roxbury, and one of the women I was working with was Nona, she came from a curriculum firm that was helping us try to create a new school. And she was working with a curriculum development firm and was on our board of trustees. A little bit later, she married Bob Lyons, and they bought a place in Kennebunk, over on the way to the Kennebunk beach. So I was great friends with her, and although even after leaving Roxbury, which is then when I went and did 3 years at Harvard, and then a year in Washington, and then 2 years in Syracuse. I was in Syracuse at this time, at 1974, and I would come back for the summer vacation, and Nona and Bob gave me the use of their house in Kennebunk, called Low Gables, a darling little place, and I could invite my family there. And so one summer I remember I had Frank's family, and the kids were all small, and we went to this lovely restaurant. And the first one that came was Liz with her kids. A lovely empty restaurant with nobody else in it. Nobody there except the woman in the corner. and we had a lovely meal, except that Billy, when he saw in those days they had the plates that come around with the hors d'oeuvres things, and he looked at that plate and said, "Is that all we're going to get?" And so we said no, he was going to get more. And it was a lovely meal, and on the way out, the woman stopped and said, "It was so pleasant to watch you because my grandchildren are out in the West, and I never see them, so it was just lovely." And that was wonderful. So then the next week comes Frank with his young kids. These are all very young. And it turned out, however, that Brendan, I'm pretty sure it was in fine fettle. He could not keep still. He was hitting the glasses. He was carousing, except that the restaurant was totally full. So Frank had to keep taking him out and getting him over and everything. So those are my memories of those times when the family was there. But while I was there, when I came back from Syracuse, that was the summer of '74, and I asked Nona and Bob, because this was now my first earning job was in Syracuse. So I now had a salary. So I'm ready to buy property. In fact, I bought a house there and transferred it, sold it, but no, later. But so I asked Nona and Bob who sold them the house, and it was Mr. Milligan. So I called Mr. Milligan and said, "I'm looking for someplace. I'm living in Syracuse," and da, da, da. And he said, "Fine." And he took me out to the center of Kennebunk, which is a huge salt block house right in the middle of Main Street with a great big lawn in front, but nothing in back because they had sold the barn for a house. And I said, "No, I don't think so. This is not exactly what I had in mind." All right, so then comes the summer of '74, and I'm repeat the sort of same thing that's coming back for the vacation in their house for these dear friends. And I call Mr. Milligan again, and Mr. Milligan again takes me to the same house. And I said, "No, that's not what I had in mind." And so now comes '75, and I'm on my way moving back to Boston now anyway. And so on their street there was a house for sale. So I called them again and said, "I see this house on the street for sale." And I said, what about that house? And he said, "I'm sorry, but it's already under contract. But I think I have something for you." And that's when he brought me over to Land's End, which was his own property, at which he had rentals and sold me here. Well, I took one look at this place, which was then one of the original cottages, military cottages from Presque Isle, Maine, from the Air Force Base. But my former owner, a minister from Pennsylvania, had added a living room. But there were 2 bedrooms and another little small third room that he had made. And so that was it. We're into it. Passed papers in October of that year, and that year I brought my first friends were here. My friends came up with me for the first opening because it was all furnished, So even with the bedding and everything. So we were sitting around the living room table, which then was a large glass table having lobsters, and for the first evening. And I looked out, and there was an absolute full moon coming up over the water. And then I turned on the radio, and what were they playing but Beethoven's Emperor Concerto. I said, there is no doubt about it. This place is a little bit of heaven, and I just love to share this little bit of heaven with anybody that comes along.
Aww. Very good.